Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Ask Microsoft Anything for Microsoft Edge. My name is Colleen Williams, and I am a Principal Product Manager on the Microsoft Edge team. My job is to talk to enterprises about Edge and new features that we're building and get feedback and bring that back into the product group. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are in the world today. I want to introduce my fellow colleagues who are helping me today and answering all of your great questions. Sandhya, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure, Colleen. Hello, everyone. My name is Sandhya Venkatraman, and I'm a Group Engineering Manager with the Edge Enterprise team. I own a bunch of features like profiles and spaces, our new Marquee feature that we just introduced in Ignite. And yeah, looking forward to chatting with all of you.
Thank you. Aranesh?
Yeah, hi. My name is Aranesh Chandra, and I am a Principal Product Manager on the Enterprise team, especially focused on security and compliance features like DLP, isolation, browser isolation, conditional access. And we have recently announced some improvement on DLP features in the Edge browser. So I'm happy to take your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thanks. And last but certainly not least, Eric.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eric Lawrence. I'm a Principal Product Manager for Microsoft. I spent 8 years working on Internet Explorer, 4 years on the Edge Web Platform team, and now I work on a partner team called Web Defense, and we build things like Smart Screen.
Thank you. And while we have us four here from the browser team here at Microsoft, we have lots of folks in the background as well who are also from the product group team who are there to answer other questions. So please feel free to answer questions as we go. All right, our first question from Charles. Edge really does sell itself for the users in our enterprise. Well, before I go on with your question, Charles, thank you so much. That is an area that we have been working on, and an area that IT admins specifically have asked us to help with. And so thank you for that. But you're calling out a gap. One gap is themes. We use the extension install allow list policy to control what extensions users are allowed to install. Unfortunately, this also impacts themes which we don't care to control. Are there any plans to make themes more accessible when you control extensions with an allow list? That's a great question. I don't know. We haven't really had a ton of enterprise feedback regarding themes, and I think this intersection is interesting to bring forward to the team as feedback. How would you want us to do it? Like what would work in your scenario? I think is helpful. You want you know, what are you trying to solve for specifically? Yeah, you want to make things more accessible, and you're using the extension allow list to do that. If we had a theme policy, would that work? You know, maybe that's really the way to go rather than the extension policy. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on a solution there, but it's something we can bring back within the team.
Yeah, I don't think we've heard that feedback before. I think it's a good thing to bring over to the extensions team to talk to. I think the general gist of that notion is that extensions are really powerful, and you know, if you allow your users to install arbitrary extensions, bad things can happen. And so saying, hey, themes are actually less powerful, and so maybe we can create some sort of policy that says end users can install arbitrary themes. So if they want to have, you know, the Mickey Mouse theme on the browser, that's fine, and we don't need to get corporate IT involved. But if they want to install a more privileged extension, then perhaps it requires additional permissions. And so I think that that's an interesting idea. Right now, there are a couple of policies that allow you some granularity in terms of what you can do in terms of your policies for what extensions are allowed. But I don't know of one that's specifically going to allow that exact scenario. And I do think it is an interesting one. So definitely bring it back to the team.
Thank you. One of the great things about having both Aranesh and Eric here is they will be able to tell you all the ways that the browser is secure and or maybe not secure. So be prepared for those types of answers. So thank you. And I do see that you followed up that a theme policy would work. So thank you for that. Our next question from Sven. My favorite type of question regarding sync. Is there a possibility to only apply this setting, force synchronization of browser data, and do not show the sync consent prompt per profile, or just the primary user profile and not on the entire Edge application? I see your scenario here. If you work for several customers and have multiple profiles, this policy will also be deployed on all those other profiles, which can make it annoying at times. So I think you bring up a very good point. Just in general, sync is pretty hard. Profiles is hard. And then you bring the two hard problems together. And as you have pointed out there, you have a scenarios to which it's not quite working for you. I don't have any additional information on sync. I think with profiles in your situation here, and you can see you also say you're not sure if there's a good solution for this. Again, I don't know if policies that can help solve this or new policies that we would put in place. This would be one that we'd have to brainstorm within the team as to perhaps what solutions might be available that would work for everybody.
So Colin, I think it would be good to find out the business need of having certain profiles sync versus some not, because I feel like a guest profile is something that you could use maybe if you don't want it showing up in other machines, right? So there are alternatives, but it would be good to get the specific use case to see if there is a workaround that we can provide.
I'm assuming, and Sven, I'm going to make some assumptions here. It sounds like your use case is really more of maybe a consultant type of role. And so you are working for multiple customers, therefore you have multiple perhaps AAD profiles and you're running into this. But good point, Sonia. Yeah, what is the use case specifically? Very good. Sonia, like I said, you're going to be super popular. Another question about profiles from Peter. Hopefully I have pronounced that correctly. How do I copy an Edge profile to a different machine, including search engine preferences and extensions?
Yeah, I can take that one. So sync is the way we actually persist our profiles across machines. And as part of sync, it's a sync consent that we ask the user. And there are a bunch of properties you can sync. And I'm pretty sure extensions is part of that sync consent. I don't know the specific thing about search engine preference that I'm not sure about, but definitely extension sync is when you do a sync consent, you can choose what are the properties like history, extensions and things like that you can specify. There's a list we can do, and extensions is part of that. I don't know about the search engine preference piece.
I think there also may be an implied question there of, can I just go into the file system and copy the files over? And I'm almost positive the answer is we don't support that.
No, definitely no.
Peter, I hope that's helpful. We have lots of great documentation on aka.ms/deploy edge that might be helpful to you in your scenario there. Oh, Mary. First of all, Mary, hello. It's been so long since we've chatted, so I really appreciate you dropping in. Please say hi to Simon for us. Question for Mary, from Mary Branscombe. I'm sure I saw that collections were going to become shareable with colleagues. This would be extremely useful for teams that want to share research right inside the browser. Is it still on the roadmap, and can you say when we might see it? So if it's still on the roadmap, I think the team is still working through collections in the next iteration of collections. But Mary, I think you know exactly where I'm going to go here, and so don't be surprised. But what about Workspaces, the new feature that we announced at Ignite? Could that be something that could be utilized right now? It's available within AAD profiles. And then it's a way to share, links and files with other AAD folks, and just right there, right in the browser. Don't have to leave or do anything else. Keep everybody on the same page and being able to work through. I think that might be something that you can take a look at. Although I know it doesn't address your very specific collections questions. Mary, you know where to find me to follow up further, and I'd be happy to chat further about that feature. Question from Charles. Both Chrome and Edge, potentially all Chromium-based browsers, have issues when upgrading via MSI. Upgrades fail. We have seen other orgs have this issue. This creates a long tail of devices with old versions. We use config manager packages / apps and also software updates to perform upgrades. We are evaluating using policy-based controls for version upgrades to see if this helps. Are there recommendations for the most successful method to perform upgrades? Great question. I don't know if from a recommendation perspective, it really depends upon what you're trying to do. Are you on the stable version of Edge? Are you on extended stable? You're using config manager. I don't know, Eric, I don't know if this is an area, I'm interested in the upgrades failing. Is that all the time or some of the time? And it seems like it's failing on more than one browser.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't think we have anybody from our setup team here. Maybe in the back end, we'll get something coming from them. It's not expected that upgrades would fail. Certainly, I mean, it's expected to work. And so I think we would want to look a little closer to understand what's going wrong with that. It's certainly the case that, from the entire population of the browser space, MS Upgrade is comparatively lesser used than other mechanisms. And so that may be how something might have slipped through the cracks. But I think definitely we would want to get into, what's going wrong there and take a deeper look to understand what may have failed. But you did identify that you do have other approaches like config manager and so forth to help ensure that users are on the best version. And so I think that that's something that is one of the best practices. Basically, don't just assume it's going to work. Continue to check and monitor what's going on. So I think we would want to take a closer look at what exactly is failing in that scenario.
Yeah. Please let us know. I'm sure if it's failing for you, it might be failing for others. So, and like Eric, I'll just reiterate what Eric said. That's not the goal to have that fail. So please follow up with us. And you can also put feedback in the browser directly or follow up within tech community. We do monitor tech community, the enterprise space, as well as the other spaces daily, and bring questions back into the product group for the very specific subject matter experts that are needed. All right, our next question from Martin. Does Microsoft apply the same changes regarding extensions that Google has now announced for their Chrome browser? If you could point me to any news on this by Microsoft, I'd be happy. Eric, can you take this one?
Sure. I am not perhaps the best person in the world to take this question. Our extensions folks, I'm not sure whether we have any on the call, but I can talk about the issue more broadly. And so the issue here mostly concerns what's called manifest v3. So Chromium-based extensions have sort of an API surface that for many years was very stable, called manifest v2. And what this meant was that extensions had very powerful capabilities in terms of doing things like looking at every request that goes out of your browser and seeing the full URLs of that request, all of the headers, and so forth. This represents a huge amount of power. And so as we alluded to earlier, enterprises very often want to disable the use of extensions within the browser or very tightly constrain which extensions the user may use in order to help ensure that their information is protected in the browser and the user doesn't inadvertently install an extension that has a serious security or privacy or corporate governance risk. And so, for instance, some people had built extensions that would do various analysis of the text that users are using in the browser. And it was found that some of that text was being sent to jurisdictions or locales that the company would be very unhappy about that data going out to. And so Manifest v2 was incredibly powerful. And the Chromium team basically decided that having the API be that stable for that long was great for building a lot of extensions. But what it meant is that it was very hard to secure the extension APIs. And so a new version of the API surface called Manifest v3 has been under development for several years. And the key notion between Manifest v3 and v2 is v3 is designed to allow extensions to be written with a lower degree of privilege. And so with that lower degree of privilege, there's improved ability for the extension stores, both Google's and ours, to verify that extensions are non-malicious, as well as to ensure that updates to that extension don't introduce new functionality that is risky to the user. And otherwise just modernize the API platform. They had found some places where, hey, Service Worker, for instance, is now a standard within the web platform, and they wanted to rewrite the way extensions use background pages to use Service Worker instead. And so Manifest v3 is kind of the new version of the Chromium platform. However, there's been a bunch of outcry about the move from Manifest v2 to v3, and the fact in particular that Chrome will begin requiring Manifest v3 for new extensions. And that comes partly from some misunderstandings early in that before the Manifest v3 API surface was complete. There were some objections of, hey, you're missing this thing that I really need, and you're taking away my ability to build the extension that I wanted to build. And that particularly came out in the form of content blockers. So if you're building an ad blocker, Manifest v3, the makers of ad blockers got very used to the capabilities they had in Manifest v2 and said, hey, I don't have exactly the same thing in Manifest v3. Is this some grand conspiracy to prevent blocking of Google's ads or something like that? And the answer is no. You can still block all of Google's ads very easily in Manifest v3. But this did create a pretty big public outcry, and basically the public asked, hey, what are other browsers doing? And so I believe there was a statement relatively early on from the Edge team saying, hey, we're going to continue to monitor this situation. And ultimately, I will go press the extensions team about whether or not they're going to make any announcements. But my belief, based on the last things I saw, was that we are going to follow the same general pattern that the Chrome team did, in that we will continue to allow Manifest v2 extensions for force-installed extensions. So effectively, if your corporation has a Manifest v2 extension that you want to continue to use past the general deprecation of Manifest v2, it'll continue to work for a period of time. While for end-user consumer browsers and things like that, Manifest v2 will get phased out and replaced with Manifest v3. And I think that we're starting to see, I've written a few extensions myself. I ported a few Manifest v2 extensions to v3 extensions. And initially there were some bugs that we worked out, but now they all work fine. And so I think overall, this is a step forward for the ecosystem. But to the specific question, is Microsoft going to follow Chrome on this? I believe the answer is yes. As with many of our web platform changes, sometimes there's a slight delay. So for some of our web platform changes, the Chrome team will make a change in 103. We'll delay it to 104 or 105 to give folks a little bit of additional time. But overall, I think there's a general agreement from the browser community, certainly at least the browser security community, that reducing the privileges that are required to build extensions and allowing them to be built in a more safe way is generally good practice. And so I think the Edge team is on board with that.
Thank you, Eric. I do want to just kind of take a step back because the next question touches upon this. As hopefully you know, Edge is a worldwide organization, and we have quite a few people in our India team, and some of the features are owned out of that area, including extensions and some other areas. And so a lot of folks are OOF this week in India, and this time isn't quite conducive. So we will do our best to answer questions in areas that perhaps we don't quite own. But I just wanted to, just kind of take a step back and let people know we have teams everywhere. All right. Our next question is from Chuck. I like the security improvements to the inbuilt password manager. Thank you for that. To further this, can you better alert when there is password reuse or a detected breached password used? Perhaps with a pop-up. Right now, users would need to manually go to the password settings and hover over the password health indicator, which seems pretty hidden. I do believe we have a policy in place that might work for you. Password monitor allowed. Allow users to be alerted if their passwords are found to be unsafe. I think that might be what you were asking for, but I do believe a policy is available. So I hope that that's a solution that would work for you. But thank you for the call out on the password manager.
Also, there are kind of two features that you talked about there. One is around breach password detection, and the other is around password reuse. And so I would note that there are a couple of policies that are available around password use, particularly for your credential that is sort of your primary credential, your AAD or your MSA credential. So there's some policies that enterprises can set around reuse of that credential. The other thing is, in terms of breach notifications, the browser will notify you if you visit a site for which you have stored a password, and that password has been flagged as breached. And so every time I go to my personal website, for instance, I get a pop-up from Edge telling me, hey, your password test has been compromised because we found test@test.com with the password test, or the user test@test.com with the password test in a data breach. And so that's not a safe password to be using on ericlawrence.com. And that is literally true. It is not particularly useful in my case because that is just a test page that I happen to build. But the browser does notify you when you visit a site, and the password manager knows that site has a stored password that has been compromised. Just because this kind of aligns with my new role, my new gig, as it were. One of the things I would note that we announced, I think it was at Ignite, but certainly in Windows 11 SV2, the most recent update to Windows 11, my team, the web defense team, has also introduced some features around protecting your Windows logon password throughout all of Windows. And so in Windows 11 SV2, if you type your Windows password in Notepad, for instance, we detect that and we say, hey, this isn't a safe place to keep your browser, your OS password. And similarly, if you type your password in a browser, if you type your password in a page that is not, your IDP, your login page, your legit login page, Windows 11 SV2 with the enhanced phishing protection has the ability to protect that credential. So to the overall point that I think that you're making, this is an area of active development and interest. And so today we have features in the browser to protect all of your credentials. And sort of the key thing there is to use the password manager. And the password manager will help protect your passwords, will fill them only into the right sites, and ensure that all of your credentials are being kept safe. And then Microsoft-wide, we have initiatives to help protect your passwords. And we've started with your Windows login password. And that is a feature that is new to the Windows 11 SV2.
Thank you. All things security related here on the Edge AMA. So thanks so much for the password question. Another question that's come in, near and dear to our hearts. When will Workspaces be available? So Workspaces is a feature that we announced at Ignite. It is available on our blog. And so this is a feature we've been working on for quite some time. And so this allows you to share a set of files and tabs with your colleagues. It's available with your AAD profiles right now. It's in public preview. We do not have a general availability date available, as we are public previews allow us to get feedback directly from customers who are using it, so we understand what state it's in, what features you need to have to make it workable. But I do see you're having a little problem, so I wanted to turn it over to Sandhya. It seems this person has enabled the feature in flags, but it doesn't seem to appear in the browser. So I think one of the first questions I would ask is what version of the browser you have. And Sandhya, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Please go ahead.
No, You asked the same, right? That's exactly what I was going to ask, Colleen. The version is what, because I think there was a specific version where we did not have it at all. Like, there was a very secure way of enabling it, which we actually turned off for the Ignite version after the Ignite announcement came out. So, it would be good to know the version as well as the channel that you're on. If you can give me both that information, then we can follow up offline to see what the issue is, if it should have been showing up for you.
Yeah, you should at least be in 107 beta. That's what the announcement that we made for Ignite. So hopefully you're there. If you are there and it's still not working, please follow up and we'll try to figure out what's happening. But thank you for at least turning on the flag and trying it. We want feedback. Please tell us, if this is working for you, what you need to have. We've gotten some great feedback so far, and please keep it coming. All right, the next question, how does efficiency mode in Edge work? Is this more than sleeping tabs? Can it be configured on the enterprise side, or is this only on the user side? So a great question on our kind of newer performance a feature that we've had over the last year. There are policies to enable efficiency mode and to work with it. So from an enterprise perspective, policies are available for you. Eric, do you want to talk maybe a little bit more about maybe how how it works?
Sure. So I mean, the general landscape here is that efficiency, specifically, using GPU, CPU, and memory effectively is a huge concern for customers, both enterprise customers and consumers, right? We want our devices to work great. And if you go into the task manager and look at your browser, a lot of times you'll see, oh my gosh, my browser is using just piles and piles of memory and it's constantly churning the CPU. And if I have certain websites loaded in my browser that I didn't even really realize that I'd still loaded, I loaded them a few days ago and they've just been sitting in the background. My computer as a whole, the battery life goes down, my ability to get things done quickly goes down, and I don't even notice. And so there is a general goal of making the browser behave more efficiently. And I want to be a little bit clear here, because this is not just a browser issue. Ultimately, it's a website issue. People are like, oh my gosh, the browser is using a gigabyte of RAM. And the answer is, well, the browser isn't really using a gigabyte of RAM. You've got a JavaScript-based application running in the browser that's using 750 megabytes of RAM. And the browser is a bit of overhead on top of that. But the browser still has a responsibility to be, a judicious guardian of the user's resources. And one of the first features that you identified there was around sleeping tabs. This idea that, a lot of us have 50 or 60 browser tabs open at a time, and we're only using one of them, perhaps, maybe two, on any regular basis. But we have all of these other tabs sitting in the background, chewing away, potentially updating constantly, streams of information that we're not even looking at. And they'll say, oh my gosh, my browser is using like 3 gigabytes of memory, and I'm not really even doing anything in this simple plain text web page that I'm working on. And it's like, yeah, but you've got like an updated feed of information in the background that has been running for 4 or 5 days, and it's accumulated all of the updates and not discarded any of them. And that's the thing that's using all the memory. And so the first feature that went into efficiency mode is this sleeping tabs feature, this idea that tabs that you haven't interacted with in a reasonable amount of time effectively go to sleep. They get frozen. They're still visually on your screen, but they're not doing updates. They're not using your CPU. They're not using as much memory. And you can effectively switch back to them, and they're generally ready to go very quickly. They're designed so that you don't lose information. So the browser is very selective about whether or not a tab is slept. So the goal there is to make sure that you as an end user will usually not notice that the background tab had been asleep. But your system, your performance of your system as a whole will benefit from that sleeping. And so that was the first feature. I'm not an expert on the perf team. I will say, though, that I believe that the general intent of efficiency mode as a whole is to go beyond that. And it's the recognition that there are sometimes scenarios, obviously we can tweak some of the heuristics around sleeping tabs. So when you've got efficiency mode activated, we can shorten the amount of time that a tab needs to be inactive before it goes into efficiency mode. We can decide maybe to make a little bit more aggressive choices in terms of which tabs are eligible for efficiency mode. But there's a general notion of, hey, the browser should be doing more, as much as it can to sort of protect the user's resources, whether it's network bandwidth, CPU, GPU, and memory. And so efficiency mode, I believe the general idea of that feature is to allow for these optimizations to take place beyond sleeping tabs. And so we've seen some of these in the underlying Chromium engine come to pass as well. So for instance, there's been some work around, hey, if you've got a frame that's been identified as a frame coming from an ad server and it's using a tremendous amount of memory, perhaps we should do things like throttle the updates in that ad frame because we recognize that it is not core to the user experience of the page. And so maybe we can dial that back down a little bit. And so sleeping tabs, I believe at the moment is sort of the key feature, the banner feature of efficiency mode. But my expectation, unless somebody in the perf team is like, no, is actually that it's really just the first part of that feature, and that we will see continued explorations about how we can improve efficiency. But the key thing with all of this is compatibility is, job number one. And so there's a bunch of things you can do to improve efficiency. So there was earlier a discussion of like the best way to improve the efficiency of the browser is to close it because then it's not using any resources at all. But that's not necessarily what you want to do, right? You want to have a browser that is using its resources aligned with the user's expectations. So that the foreground tab that they're interacting with is not constrained on bandwidth, is not constrained on its use of the CPU. It's really working as quickly as it can to get that user's task accomplished. But things that are not really core to the user, not important to that user, can be deferred, delayed, or otherwise reduced in their cost to ensure that the browser is doing its very best for the user.
Thank you, Eric. Our next question, back to Workspaces. So Sandhya, get ready. Where can I find a demo of Workspaces? So in the blog post, in the Workspaces video, there is a demo that shows you how Workspaces works and what you can expect from it. You ask here, interested in this option for onboarding with a single link and want to see how customizable it is. Is the link, for example, specific to our tenant or ... Sandhya, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of talk about Workspaces and what is available there.
Yes. So the Workspaces today is available for AD accounts, and it is specific to your tenant. And we are actually, and you can only share the link for the space in between the accounts in that particular tenant, right? So if there is a Microsoft, if we all are in Microsoft, we can share a space because we all have the same Microsoft.com email, right? That's kind of what we are. And actually, you talked about onboarding, and Workspace is a classic example of using for onboarding, like a set of new hires to a team, or when people are working on a project, they can collaborate on a set of tabs and documents and things like that. And that's all classic examples of why we built Workspaces, right? Anything else that I did not cover? I think, that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so it's within your AAD tenant. So if you are in a situation where you are a consultant and you have multiple AAD tenants, you would not be able to cross share there. So it is within your tenant. So love to see that you're asking questions. Please go take a look at the video. The Workspaces video specifically is only about 6 minutes, which does include a demo. So make sure you take a look at that. Aranesh, you thought you might be able to walk away without a question, but that is not the case. So next question. Do features like Application Guard conflict with performance and battery saving policies? Who doesn't love talking about Application Guard? You're muted.
Sorry about that. So yeah, I do love talking about Application Guard. Thanks for the question. Basically, Application Guard, for the rest of the viewers, is a browser isolation feature that is available on Windows via Edge. And it's a Windows platform feature. So what happens is any kind of policy for battery or performance that you deploy on the host device that gets replicated in the isolated container as well, barring some of the policies that we deem can interfere with the isolation feature that we are providing through this. But majority of the policy that gets deployed on the host is replicated to function in the same way, at least for performance and battery purposes. So no, it does not interfere with the battery or performance policies.
Perfect. And while I have you right here, Aranesh, I'd like to ask you about our latest feature that was announced a few months ago, and we talked about at Ignite, sensitive service domains. So can you enlighten us on that new security feature?
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up as well. So there's a new advancement that we announced in our DLP support. But to take a step back, what Colleen referred to here is that there is a native support for DLP that comes out of Microsoft. It's called Microsoft Purview DLP, Endpoint DLP. And if you have deployed that in your organization for protecting your information from data leak perspective, what value Edge brings is that it is natively built. You don't have to deploy any plugins and enforce its usage and maintain and upgrade the plugins whenever new browser versions comes out. It's a really easy to use DLP solution from a browser perspective. It has been in the market for a couple of years now, and what we have enhanced that feature with this time around, which the sensitive service domain, is that unlike a lot of competitors have DLP competitors have file-based DLP protection that your DLP. And what Edge supported was like if you open up a sensitive PDF file in the browser, then we will protect that. Or if you're trying to upload a sensitive file to an unauthorized location, we'll protect that. But with the new enhancement, what we have done is that we allow the admin to describe sensitive websites, not just files, but sensitive websites where protection can be applied. So you have an HR related sites, or in a healthcare company, there's patient information that is available through a website. All of those can be marked as sensitive, and the Edge browser can bring up leak controls where you cannot copy, paste data out of the browser, or print or download and things like that. So we are providing a unique perspective that is unavailable, broadly across the DLP landscape and the solutions that we have available. Customers have access to. So this is a new innovation in this space. So we'd highly recommend you trying this out and give us feedback on that.
Thank you. Our next question from Chris. We currently have Google Chrome published in our Citrix virtual apps environment. We are interested in moving to Edge instead. Excellent interest. Thank you for considering us. Are you able to point to any particular advantages of switching, perhaps in terms of integration with M365 generally? Well, we only have 20 minutes left, but I will do what I can here. From an M365 perspective, I mean, Edge is the most natural browser within integration with M365. It's just super simple with the sign in and the syncing. Your Office apps are right there on the Enterprise new tab page. We introduced a new feature about a month or so ago, again discussed at Ignite, the sidebar. So this has a variety of icons on the far right of your screen. And those can be customizable within the enterprise. And generally what we see from enterprises is you want to focus on Office and Outlook. And so it's just right there. You don't have to move outside the browser. You don't have to switch to go back. Maybe it's in Win32 applications. You can just stay right there in your tab, click over on the right-hand side, open up Outlook will just be right there on the right. You can reply to an email, search, that type of thing. We are always looking at further integrations with our M365 partners. So you'll see more coming there. Those are just the few that I have off the top of my head. I'm sure I will remember more as soon as we get off the phone. I do want to point out Edge is the most secure browser on Windows 10 and 11. We have a blog post on how we are able to say that. I know that you're using a virtual apps environment, but we are the better choice there from a security perspective, and then just a natural integration with M365 and everything we have to offer there. So thank you for the question. All right, we have a little bit of time left, so please keep the questions coming. We have another one here. We specialize in working with people of all abilities. Are there any accessible trainings for Edge accessibility features? We did a special accessibility video for Ignite, lots of great announcements there at Ignite, and a specific 4 or 5 minute video that talks about all of our accessibility features. I'm interested in what you mean by trainings, like trainings on how to use the accessibility features. Is that what you're looking for? I know we have some information in the video, and I believe there's some demos in the video as well that will help you with the latest accessibility features that we have announced. So I hope that helps you in your goals there. Love all of the accessibility questions. Obviously that's always something of importance and near and dear to our hearts. So please make sure you keep the feedback coming on any accessibility features that we don't have or need improvements on. All right. What else? We've got a few more minutes for questions to come in to ask our team. Hopefully you've had some great engagement on the back end. It looks like another question has come in. I'm just reading it. Apologies for the silence. Reading and thinking at the same time. All right, troubleshooting with Mark. Frequency of updates which supersede previous versions are getting in the way of getting this consistent. Okay. The release of a functional release days after a security release exacerbates the process. In these two product cases, there are 60 to 70 plus versions across the organization. In many cases, machines report having multiple versions of the browsers in both Chrome and Edge. So it looks like you may have some residual legacy processes in from your deployment software. I don't know if there's a great straightforward way to answer this question. It sounds kind of like you've got a lot going on here. Are you on the stable channel? Like I would have a lot of questions back, and this seems like it's something that we'd like to follow up maybe one-on-one with our release team as well, to understand what's happening in your environment and what you are trying to do from a release perspective. We do have our extended stable release, which is updated every 8 weeks, versus a stable version, which is updated every 4 weeks. That may help you in the consistency or the number of releases that come about. It looks like you have multiple versions across your organization, so interested in how you're doing the update. So I'm sorry, I don't really have a great, I don't know, Eric, if you have anything here, but this really looks like maybe a deep dive one-on-one conversation perhaps to have with the customer.
Yeah, so he mentions having some deployment software, and certainly it could be the case that that there's just some bugs in that software that need to get worked out. I think there is more general sort of topic here, which is, man, browsers update a lot, and what's going on with that? And certainly that has accelerated recently. The Chrome and Edge both moved to 4-week release cycles for stable versions when we introduced the extended stable channel, which gets you out to 8 weeks. And a lot of that has to do with sort of, both security and functionality. And the teams are laser focused on ensuring that we're moving as quickly as possible to fix any security vulnerabilities and get those fixes out. And then also watching the feedback from those new releases as they go out. And so if a new version goes out and there's a security vulnerability in it, there will be a security patch that goes out for that in short order. But simultaneously, if we get feedback from enterprises about a regression that made its way into the stable channel, for instance, we will evaluate the impact of that and say, hey, can we get an update out for this before the next stable release, before the next version bump from 106 to 107? Can we get a functionality fix for that out to ensure that any customer using whatever popular app platform isn't impacted by that regression? And so we really do have the best interests in mind in terms of both security and the reliability of the web applications we're using. And I think this faster pace of release for software is something that's kind of new to the industry. Like in the old days, I started in Internet Explorer, we shipped, Patch Tuesday, there were a couple of fixes, but you got new features every 3 years or so. And we're just not in that world anymore. And so I think that some of the old processes and technologies do need to get updated for this new world. But we're also, super sensitive to the fact that, a lot of times IT would prefer, can't we just freeze everything? And unfortunately, in a world where there's bad guys that are trying to do bad things to your users, the answer is not safely. No.
Thank you. And like I said, we do monitor the tech community chat, so please feel free, Mark, to continue to engage with us there, and then we can have a deeper conversation that would be more helpful. We just have a few minutes left here, so I want to take the opportunity to just kind of do a quick wrap up amongst my colleagues here. You have, all 4 of us have been on the browser team for a very long time and associated with browsers for a very long time. So I want to go around, do a round robin as to what your favorite thing about working on the browser is. So Aranesh, I'm going to start with you.
Well, yeah, so we have been working together and on browsers for some time now. And one of the great things that I feel really proud of working on the browser is knowing the fact that, browser is such an important part of people's lives. And, regardless of how, things have moved with, mobile and the tech has evolved so much, but it is still kind of one of the #1 app that gets used on a desktop today. And it's such a central part of people's life, and having an opportunity to impact that experience in a positive way for end users or admins or whoever, it makes me feel really proud to come here to work for a browser product.
Thank you, Aranesh. 2 minutes left. Sonia, you're up. What's your favorite thing about working on Edge?
Unlike Eric and Colleen and Aranesh, I've not been for a decade in the browser. I've been less than a decade, but this is the first product in Microsoft I worked on that I could explain to my parents what I do at work, right? I mean, this is like a product that you can explain to anyone, even like to a middle schooler, and they will understand what the product is, right? So for me, that's the exciting thing. And specifically for enterprise, I love the fact that, we actually introduced the concept of profiles with the browser, which wasn't there in the Spartan era, right? So that is my favorite feature in the browser.
Thank you, Sandhya. Eric, this is a big question for you with your 100-year experience on the browser teams. We have less than 1 minute, so see if you can wrap that up.
Sure. So I would say the number one thing that I'm excited about with the browser is the move to Chromium allowed for much, much more agility in terms of our ability to respond to feedback. And the fact that we have beta channels that corps can go out and deploy in fast rings and try out their applications and find bugs and regressions before they actually hit stable and send us that feedback and tell us what went wrong. And we have the ability to get things fixed before they ever reach the stable population. And so I love this much faster release cycle. I love the fact that corporations can participate in ensuring that their stuff is going to work great in the latest version. And I love the fact that the code is flexible enough that we can fix stuff fast. And so I love that flywheel. It's awesome.
Thank you. And I'm just going to wrap up. I've worked on the browser since IE9. So like I say to everyone, and I'm sorry if you've heard it before, I have seen things. Someone has described being on a browser as the software Olympics. And so we see absolutely everything when it happens, how it happens, and we get all of the feedback when it occurs. I love speaking with enterprises. Thank you for joining us today. Please keep the feedback coming. Love when it happens. Try out our features, give the feedback. The more information we get, the better the product is. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.